the future master plan pathway connectivity, which is a huge element of this project. The property is 6 acres, as I mentioned. The zoning is R8, which would actually allow 48 units. That has been scaled back, as you probably all are aware. I don't know if there's been any change in the, no, everyone knew about Woodmore Crest subdivision. Okay, maybe not Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Thompson, in 2023, there was a subdivision proposed on this property by the same developer, which received robust feedback. People are chuckling, but to be honest, people were very critical of it. It was too dense. The scaling was off. It really did not jive with the property. This development team really was not part of that. Mr. Cottle and his group went back to the drawing board. I would say my law office doesn't often see that. I think sometimes when developments fall through, they just fall through and a developer sells and maybe moves on. Not here. They went back to the drawing board, completely revamped the project, got an entirely new development team, and this is a much improved project that I believe I'm really proud to stand behind, as well as our design group. So that's a kind of prior application history here. We've seen a reduction of units. We're talking about 42 units in 19 structures. This is really a wonderful infill type project. This is, I think, what the city is looking more towards. I mentioned pathway connectivity already, and then a really significant dedication and commitment to preserve historical trees on the site and undisturbed landscape. So we see 27% of the site staying undisturbed. Just as a overview, and I don't want to belabor what is a PUD compared to just a subdivision application. Overall, the PUD will permit some flexibility with code interpretation. The goal is to preserve natural scenic qualities, efficient use of parks and open space, harmonious variety of neighborhood development and urban amenities, and to promote local housing. That is from the McCall City PUD code. I think this proposal does exactly that. I mentioned this, but the density is below what is allowed in this zone is noteworthy, and this developer is not asking for any density bonus here. We are going to ask for some code alleviations, and I'll talk about them later. But there is some code alleviations that we are asking for, which are really just inherent in a townhome type proposal. As I mentioned, so what are these 42 units in 19 structures? Would you mind going back, Meredith? Thank you so much. We have what they're called Meadowwood Townhomes, Trailside Townhome, Pine Grove Townhome, Aspen Glade Townhomes. If you look closely at the design, it's been amazing what Epicos has done with this, which is to show you what are the 2-story duplexes, 2-story daylight duplexes, 3-story duplexes, and 3-story triplexes. The 3-story triplexes, the proposal has 4 of those, and they are really thoughtfully placed on the property in order to preserve open space, in order to preserve historic trees. Also, so that when pedestrians or drivers on First Street or Colorado approach the neighborhood, it's not like this mass of development. It really looks more natural and cohesive with the property. There are 5 new pathways proposed. All units will be on a trail, meaning really that kind of idyllic McCall situation where you're riding your bike or walking to your job or the park or the lake. We'll use that existing rail trail pathway. The developer will do an entirely new pathway through the middle of the subdivision, calling it an east-west pathway that is paved. And when I say completely new, it kind of exists right now, in which we have high school kids walking across it, but it is on the city master plan as pathway. And snow storage exceeds. Those are kind of some of the basics. Overview also would be, I mentioned connectivity with the subdivision to the north. So access would be off Colorado and First into sort of a through street all the way through the subdivision to the north back to First Street. We're talking about significant improvements to First Street, which is incredible for this project. Wayne will talk about the specifics of what that means, but the developer is really putting in a lot of development onto First Street. Obviously, the sidewalks, the word is escaping me, swales? Is that what they're called? The swales, all those types of things. I think I'll turn it over to Wayne or Emily to just get into some of the specifics of the townhome specifications. And then I'm going to come back to talk about how we're asking for deviations from city code and more specifically about our amenities. But I think it seems like a good time to tell you what are these townhomes from the design team specifically. So thank you. I will come back.
Wayne Rumley, Epicoast Design. The office is at 303 Colorado Street, just down the street here, and live at 1008 Bitterroot Drive.
Emily Bettine, also work at Epicoast. I'm the landscape architect for this project. We're at 303 Colorado, and I'm personally at 13667 Farm to Market. If you could go back to the site plan, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the specifics of the site planning that make this such a project that we are so excited about. Amy did a great job introducing it, giving you the overview, but I really want to speak to how amazing it was to meet with Alan, where we all knew some of the history of this project and had some skepticisms, and his vision for this project is why we have it here before you today. He wants to be a part of this neighborhood. We are all part of this neighborhood. You know, our office is right down the street. Amy's office is right down the street. So we know this parcel, we know how it fits in. And so we were able to develop a site plan with smaller units and drive the design by the site, not by some metric of numbers that engineers or development plans forced upon the site. We were able to walk the site, say, Kurt flagged these incredible trees for us. These are important. Look at the slopes. Look at what's here. And how can we make buildings work within that? And so that's where our firm works well together. And so we kind of looked at the site and we said, these are areas we can't build here. So the hilltop, some of the really spectacular trees, the hillside kind of to the south, that area would be hard to develop anyway. That is an amazing amenity for this property to have undisturbed native vegetation. But aside from that, the hilltop, we were able to push the units a little bit more dense of a footprint. That's why we have some 3-story units. But we were also able to fit this into the fabric by keeping those 3-story units in the interior of the project. So you'll see on the site plan that 41, 42 in the top right corner, 1, 2 right at the intersection. Those are 2-story duplex units that are exactly to the scale of the neighborhood adjacent. And so I will let Wayne go into the architecture a little bit more, but I just wanted to kind of reiterate that all of these units are on trails. We have 5 new pathways as part of this project. 1 improved hard surface pathway right through the middle that provides that high school to the community connection along First Street. The improvements as part of the development, much broader First Street improvements, but also an improved hard surface pathway there. And then all the way around the site, you'll see the kind of tan pathways. Those are all going to be natural surface, walk your dog. The public will be invited, but they will be managed by the HOA. And so because of the design of the units, all of these units do exit out onto the trails and have a real pedestrian scale to them. The roadways are kind of almost your back door, where you drive in, you drive out, but you as a person walk out your back deck, maybe walk down some stairs, and then you're on a trail and you're part of the community. So with that, I will let Wayne dive into the building design that makes that possible.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, as Emily mentioned, I think, well, and Amy mentioned it a little bit as well. The, we were a little skeptical based on the last round and what we saw in the various meetings to get involved in this project. But after speaking with Alan and hearing his words and his description, we're like, I think we can get that better than what went before. So yeah, so as everyone said, credit to Alan for coming back and exploring the process again to arrive at this design. And like I say, I think we've met something that's much closer to his original comments to us, right? So where he wanted something that would in 100 years look like it's appropriate to McCall and look like it's been here, like it's just fits into the neighborhood. So again, just real quickly, yeah, we started with Kurt's flagged trees. We really were given carte blanche to start over. We took a look at what had come before and we kept what made sense. So we are definitely keeping everything along First Street, the sidewalk, the swale, the widened road, moving it to the west, giving up the 30 feet of property in order to create a proper right of way there. We are, stormwater, so some of the engineering and some of those earlier commitments, those are still there. The units, again, as Emily mentioned, once we got out there and we started walking these large ponderosa pines that are there and these real dramatic trees, they ended up really kind of creating these spaces that were buildable. I think I may have mentioned that maybe it was in the pre-app. Dave's probably heard this now 3 times, but there were these pockets of development. And so we kind of looked at what is the right size to fit in there rather than saying we need these, large units. And so, yeah, we squeezed the footprint a little bit so that we could save as many of those large trees as possible. That in turn does mean we're going 2 and 3 stories high. We reanalyzed the grading of that road in there. We listened to all of Morgan's earlier concerns. There was a steep spot, there was storm drainage issues, there were all these pieces that we snowshoed out there and we were looking at that and we're like, I think we can do this and keep it really gentle slopes. And so anyway, yeah, I don't know. I guess we can jump ahead to another slide and just talk about the architecture. We did kind of group these townhomes into slightly different names for where they're mostly located on the site. So we have the trailside townhomes. Those are a little bit bigger. They are now 2 stories tall. The previous design, they were significantly taller and they were on top of about an 8-foot tall retaining wall. So we felt they really loomed over the site. We're working with the slope of the site so that they step down and the back door of those really exits almost on grade with the trail. Yeah, there we go. Trailside townhomes. So again, they step down with the site. That rendering on the left side, you're standing on the asphalt of the bike path. And that's about how those boulders are roughly where the property line would be. And then we have a pathway that meanders back onto your, to your lower level. Duplex property. And, again, just because we want to push these together, open up as much space in between the units by having a townhome type of a product, which eliminates one setback, one interior setback. So we have just the site is more spacious. That tree in that rendering is accurately located. That's right where it is. And it's a big, beautiful tree. So we want to keep that. If you can tab to the next one or to the next one. Yep, the Meadow townhomes. Again, 2-story duplex that works on a flat site. So these are the ones a little bit smaller than the last duplexes, but these are, we're locating some of these a little more adjacent to the existing neighborhood. So again, they stay in scale with the neighborhood, 2 stories tall with a roof, nothing, outrageous. We're not trying to push any height limits on any of these. The next unit, and again, jump in if you, because I've been in these files for so long. The Pine Grove townhome, this is now where we do start getting into the 3 stories. They are predominantly buried into a sloping site. So the lower right image is looking at the backyard. That's how they exit out their back door onto a trail or a pathway. And then on the left image, you can see where the car is pulled up to the garage. That is a partially buried garage and lower level. And that's how we're keeping them stepping with the site. And then, yeah, those are the ones that we really did skinny up the footprints. And then the Aspen Glade townhome, which is a triplex unit. And so, essentially this is taking that previous unit, we opened it up, we pulled it apart, put a third unit in the middle. The middle unit is actually slightly larger than the side units, and kind of to help compensate for not having those extra windows and things like that. So we really think those are going to be very livable. And again, they just help us to keep the density a little higher, and we located them in areas again where we have a little more room between those existing trees. So I think that's maybe I don't know how deep we want to get into the design of the units. The materials and the siding, again, very, very much in compliance with what's envisioned in the McCall design review code, natural colors and natural materials. It'll be a combination on these, a little more, because it is a townhome product, we will be doing something there with some warranties and, some fiber cement and some composite materials just to keep the longevity and keep the maintenance down. Next slide, I think, is then back maybe a little more into Emily's.
So I would say that the highlight of the landscape for this site is preserving as much of the native vegetation as possible. And then from there, we want to enhance it with more natives that we bring back in. I walked along the rail trail on my way here, and I just am so excited to continue the continuity of those aspen groves that you get on the skate park side back up into the site again. Everything that we're proposing already exists. We're not reinventing anything. We are just making this new and fresh and fitting within the fabric of what we love about McCall. So in addition to keeping the large trees, we are implementing the fire hazard mitigation. So some of the small trees will be thinned. We will have some of those buffers around the units that increase resiliency in case of any fires in our community. Really close to the fire station, so that's great. We love these urban infill projects so that we can keep more of the existing trees. Just to kind of note, like you will see on the rendering up above, that there are some boulders. We are not doing any concrete or manufactured retaining walls for this project. Any places that we are retaining are going to be with natural local boulders. And those locations are really minimized in order to preserve trees and add pathways. So there's no retaining around the buildings because we integrated the architecture into the site plan. And so the units themselves either retain along the walls on an uphill or a downhill site. And so the only places that we are adding those boulders is around those large existing trees to keep our road grades very gentle. I think our steepest spot is maybe 5%. So there's nothing steep at all on this site for roads, for driveways. And then the pathways are also, I believe the steepest spot on the pathways maybe 8%. Again, those are to the standards as requested by our wonderful Parks Committee. We had a really great experience working with that committee. They had a few really helpful feedback points, like we have some natural surface pathways. One of the members recommended that we add a transition zone of another hard surface 10 feet off of the hard surface pathways to transition to the natural surface gravel pathways so that we don't get gravel traveling onto the hard surface pathways and increasing maintenance. So great experience saving trees, adding paths. And again, the site will preserve native vegetation. With that, I think we can turn it back to Amy for some of the more technical amenities.
Thank you, Wayne and Emily. The PUD code does require 2 amenities. I think this proposal may have many more than that, but as a commission, you just need to find that it meets that. We've talked a lot about that east-west paved pathway. Another amenity that's specifically recognized by the code is that picnic area type of place. This would be maintained by the HOA. It'd be a natural surface pathway, excuse me, to a picnic area. We are proposing 4 deed restricted local housing units. The contemplation there is that they would be throughout the subdivision, so not all together grouped, which they had previously been proposed as such. And that really, from city staff perspective, which we can understand, didn't make sense. And this would allow, if the developer did decide to do a phasing proposal, that there would be a deed restricted local housing unit as it was phased. So it wouldn't be held off until the end. There would be one in the first phase, one in the second phase. And that's just part of the opportunity in the PUD for the developer to come up with a development agreement with city council to do a phased project. And so we're leaving that door open. Talking with Alan and his team, it sounds like the infrastructure would all be put in at the same time, and then phased construction. And then I loved this when we met with the parks group. One of the members called the tree protection plan that we've proposed priceless, and that really meant a lot to all of us. Preservation of the many old growth trees. So proposed amenities, I think, are robust in this project. And here's just a bullet point of what those are. The PUD code specifically recognizes a few amenities as being just right in the code, but then has this catch-all phrase or anything else that the commission decides. So we've come up with what those are. And then this is where some people start to fall asleep, but I'll just try to be quick about how the PUD code exists. It is allowed in any zone. It specifically allows an applicant to request modifications to the standards and that those be minimal and cohesive with the surrounding area and features. So that ultimately what you don't get is some highly dense apartment unit next to maybe open fields or something that doesn't really make sense, or something in a PUD that might be really loud noises or late night type commercial activities or something next to a church. So it asks for cohesiveness. I'm not talking about anything specific. I'm just giving examples. And so it talks about, cohesive with the surrounding neighborhood. So if you look at First Street in Colorado, what is going on there? Really residential type uses of this same type of feature when you look at them from the street, of the same type of size. And I think Wayne and Emily hit on that super well. The proposed uses shall not be detrimental to potential surrounding uses, detrimental to health, safety, general welfare. That's sort of touches on what I just talked about. So this is physical features of the site, public facilities. Really, this is compatible to the surrounding area wholly. The density of a planned unit development is considered related to underlying zones and future land use. This is marked as medium density residential now and on the master plan. It is zoned R8, which would allow more density, but here we're proposing actually 6 less units than which could be. Existing and proposed streets and utility services must be suitable and adequate. I said, see the site improvement plan and preliminary site grading. The street improvements are really important on First Street. The city's services are really right to the property. So there's not going to be huge running water from very far away or any of those things. They're all really there and close. And then the last aspect is that development agreement, which is required by the developer and city. I included a preliminary one in our packet, and then we just work on that throughout the application to really make it make sense with Morgan and Meredith and the whole group on what their requirements are. So I just wanted to touch on what that is. Specifically, what are we asking to be alleviated? And this is where we hit on it, and it is outlined in our narrative. I'll just highlight them, and then obviously I will stand for any questions. These are all code alleviations that you see in townhome projects, because townhome projects don't make any sense with setbacks and lot coverage. They share walls, so they don't make sense under certain residential codes just generally. So you'll see the minimum lot size, setbacks, lot coverage, the private open space. There is no private open space when two people share a wall. And so those are really just the common ones that you see with any kind of townhome project. The garages is a little bit more unique maybe in this PUD than all of them, but this garage door is occupying more than the allowable 50% of street facing building facade. Okay, so this is a little bit confusing, but all the parcels are going to be accessed by internal streets. So the garages, because of the way that they are over city code allowance, but they're not public facing. So the impact is very minimal there. The private right of way is less than 60 feet, clustered density to preserve trees, and it still provides a 22-foot driveway parking spaces. And then the height limit. I had a lot of back and forth trying to understand with Emily, and she was so helpful to understand what really is the impact of this height limit. Like, are we going really high? On the 35-foot city height limit, the 3 triplexes exceed the height limit from existing grade, but at the proposed grade upon construction, they actually won't exceed 35-foot height limit. That's right, Emily? Okay, good. I said it correctly. Thank you. So it's not like we're going to have these super tall things that are offensive to everybody. But it is a code deviation the way that it is right now. And then the final thing is Emily and Wayne mentioned our work with parks, but we are asking for parks in lieu of, which is that fee structure, rather than doing a pocket park, which the city doesn't want to see and doesn't want to maintain. So this is that code allowance that allows, and I put the figure on there, the proposal from Parks was 77,310 with a tree protection plan that we did include. So I went through code deviations kind of fast, but I think that overall they really make sense with the site, the attempt to preserve trees, the look of the townhomes compared to surrounding areas. Walking on the path, you're going to see a beautiful developed subdivision. And so these really do make sense. We're not asking for, I don't think, huge deviations where it feels like, oh, this developer is asking to just throw our code out the window and really just do something completely not in conformance with the space itself or the surrounding land uses. This really makes sense with both of those things. Just a comment on agency communication and planning. First, big thanks to Morgan and Meredith and her crew. You had a special person that worked on the staff report who I can't remember that person's name, but thank you. Nina, and thank you to Nina. So thanks to all those folks. They work really hard with us, and Alan and Emily and Wayne. So today we had and over the course of time, I know there have been more, but today I'll start with the city engineering conversation. This is a little bit of unique to this project. First Street does in the master plan have an extension to the south. We got into a lot of details of what that would take for the city to do that. It sounds like a long-term plan. So what do we do here that would make sense? And understandably, the developer doesn't want to get rid of a unit such as unit 1. We want to keep that unit, and we can do that by agreeing that we would do a jog easement on the plat and in a development agreement that would say, should First Street be extended, should it occur, then adjacent to lot 1 in the common lot, the developer would allow the city to put a city sidewalk exactly where the pathway would be. And we would notify the owner of lot 1 through all sorts of ways. It would be on the plat, it would be in the development agreement. We might even come up with a creative new engineering sheet so that it's abundantly obvious that if you buy lot, we'll call it lot 1, that there potentially could be First Street in front of your townhome. And we talked about snow storage and those types of things. So we've gotten creative, I think, in order to address that potential future event if it should happen. On mitigating traffic impacts, there was a traffic study, entire rebuild of First Street to the north. So that yellow area is really ways of which this application is doing a tremendous amount to contribute to First Street. The other only agency comment to really comment on is that our engineers are working with the Payette Lakes Recreational Water and Sewer District about which way does the sewer flow and how are we going to do this and how are we going to hook this up. They were emailing as recently as a week or so ago. So they are working with them, and I don't think there were really any other agency comments of note. And then I will probably say thank you and sit down, and then if there are technical design questions, we'll have those to the group. Who knows them better than I do, and also some of the really nice depictions that we want to leave you with here at the end. And some of these are thanks. Great. So overall, we're asking planning and zoning to vote tonight. We would love to see a vote tonight and not a delay. And the conditions of approval, I think proposed by Meredith and Nina are making sense. We are working with city engineer. And so we would ask for an approval with the conditions of approval as put forth by staff. Thank you so much. I'll stand for any questions. Or I'll sit and then you just tell me.
All right, commissioners, any questions for Amy or the applicant? Wayne?
Wayne, the 3-story units back up against the hillside where that's undeveloped, right?
The 3-story, so I don't know if you can bring that back up. There is. Yeah. I'll take any. Primarily, yes, so the kind of the crown of the hill,
Yeah.
which we didn't really talk too much about, but we're gonna really keep that completely undeveloped. And we're putting those 3-story units into that hillside along the downhill side.
So my question's about the 35 feet. So existing grade is a slope, but you're gonna excavate that down.
Yes, yeah, existing grade is a slope. So the 35-foot height limit, one thing that maybe we didn't get quite into the detail with is, I don't know how many of you remember back in about 2006 or whenever they went in and started excavating those roads. So there's a lot of kind of man-made issues on that site. There's a couple of really deep holes that were dug, which are now immediately under some of these townhome units, like in that image right there that you see. And so there's these probably, I don't know, 6-8 foot deep holes. So we're basically asking to ignore those as being an existing grade, right? Even though they're existing, but we didn't want to fill them and then get a new survey and try to ignore them.
Yeah.
And then, so there's some height limit issues. Busts are where the existing road site was carved up back, 19 years ago or whatever that was. There is one, and this is the one right here. There is one 3-story. Read, where's the
Three
site
of
plan? Yes, you're right, you're
Three
right.
of the triplexes, because of the mass grading of the site, we weren't able to situate those 3-story units low enough
Yeah,
to set them into the earth. We have to fill a little bit, and it's not the entire roof line that's over 35 feet. It's because the site is sloping, there's like one corner plane,
yeah.
where our existing grade is lower than our finished grade. And the 3-story triplex units that are designed for the flat sites, as opposed to the 3-story duplexes that are buried. So in the middle, we have duplexes and triplexes. The duplexes back into the hillside
Yes.
and are buried. Those have no issues with existing or proposed because they're buried. Then you get into the triplexes that are built for flat sites. They exit out the back door of their garage on grade. But because of the mass grading of the site, we were not able to set them low enough on existing grade to be less than 35 feet from existing, but they will
Yes.
be less than 35 from finished grade in all cases.
Yes, 14, 15, 16, which was in that rendering. That
Little bit
was,
of that one.
there's a little
Little bit
bit
of
on that
that
one. Yes, yeah. So I don't know, that's a long-winded explanation. It's probably more confusing than it was worth. The buildings are not taller than 35 feet
And I think
as designed.
my most of them are below the grade of First Street anyway, so it's not like
Yes.
the people across the street are gonna be looking at a roof.
Yes, yes. In fact, one of those last renderings, if you wouldn't mind tabbing to that, is a view where you are on Colorado and First roughly at that intersection. Because we wanted to show you that we also stepped, that the two-story units are, so we've, yeah, one back. So this is our estimation, sorry, go. Yeah, there. That's our estimation of First and Colorado. And you can see the pines on the right, those are the existing pines. If anything, we've probably undersized them. They'd probably go off the top of the page, the screen there. And so you can see the home there nearest you is a two-story home on the left. And then as you get into the project, that's where you get the three-story. And the ones that have little corners of those roof edges are 35 feet. Hopefully that helps. I don't know. Probably confused things. Sorry.
On the 3-story units with the 2 garages at the bottom, is
Yes.
there any storage in those? Or is it just a garage?
It's a garage. I'm trying to remember now. So what we ended up doing is it's a 2-car garage in a tandem configuration. So it's actually a 1-car door, for all intents and purposes. We don't have the width on those units to go wide. So it's a 1 car in front of the other. And then there is a lot of storage in that space there as well.
So it's not 2 cars that you're gonna park in the garage and close the doors. It doesn't come up that way then, right?
Yeah, they're not side by side. When you park in those, they're not side by side, they're front to back. So you have 1-car garage, but you have another car, you have 2 cars front to back
Oh, okay.
and a single door.
It kinda
Right, there you go.
Kind of looked like 2 doors side by side. That's what it kind of looked like.
Oh, so that's where so here we go. Here's a floor plan. And so you can see like on the left part of the screen, we have actually that's an F-150 combined with a passenger sedan in there. So they both fit end to end. And then we have room for, small workbench or garbage cans or, bike storage for sure on these properties. So there is storage in there, along with some mechanical and room to walk around and all that. It's a nice size. Yeah, but again, that's kind of the sacrifice in a way that has to be made in order to squeeze these together and save those trees, right? So we couldn't do a standard 28-foot wide unit. Got to go down.
Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant else? Okay,
Thank you.
Meredith. App report?
To be brief. No, I torture you. So your staff report, Nina Schaefer from Jacobs Engineering helped me prepare that. She did a lot of the code analysis, since this is a bigger project. So I then did a review of hers and then reviewed it again with the application team to make sure we weren't missing anything. Most of you were among us during the previous iteration of an application for this site. But that is not what we're deliberating today. But my impression is that this design did start at the right place with the city code explaining get to know your site and work with the topography and conditions of that site, and then proceed with your design process rather than calculating your maximum density and your maximum square footage allowable and going from there. So even from the beginning process wise, they really deployed the manner that we like to see for site planning, where they acknowledge that we have a lot of rocks, we have a lot of ditches, we have a lot of strange features to our community, sometimes left over from previous development attempts and sometimes made just of nature. In this case, the trees on the site are extremely significant. Even in the previous names of the site, it used to be called Cathedral Pines at one point, and it really does kind of feel almost holy to walk through if that's how you feel about things, because those pines are so big and old and impressive, and we don't have a lot of those to celebrate, especially in the downtown core at this point. So it is located there on Colorado and First. It's kind of in a fun patchwork area where many zones come together. So it provides a lot of opportunity for creativity in putting a medium density residential development in there, where it'll blend the civic zone into a lower density residential followed by commercial areas. So it's kind of the style of development that planners like to see when we talk about infill development, where it kind of weaves the fabric of different parts of the community together so that we can eventually have a complete whole. It's located along a lot of impressively underdeveloped right-of-ways. So First Street was originally half platted in 1918 when McCall was named Lakeport. And then nobody ever platted the other. So the west half of First Street doesn't officially exist, and we're trying to make it officially exist now 107 years later. And that's just the game that we play sometimes, and this development has accounted for their portion of completing the street. Many different documents have been submitted. We've already got a couple ideas for some amendments to the development agreement before we would recommend it get to council, that the development team is happy to work on with us. Those mostly relate to that First Street extension concept and getting the language of how do you trigger an eventuality that we don't know when it will happen, but we'd like to reserve that opportunity for the future. Programming that into the development agreement is a really good tool at our disposal. This project did go to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee 1, 2, 3 times to make sure that they could get a good recommendation out of the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee that would be a satisfying contribution to the Parks Department, as well as meet the standards for a planned unit development of this size. So they're doing both a combination of a paved and maintained pathway, the purchase of some materials like doggy basket, trash bag thingies and trash bins, and then an in lieu of fee contribution, an amount that's been accepted by the Parks Committee at this point. And that's included towards the end of your materials. So that does come with the recommendation of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. Dave is a member, so we may have a question about, can Dave vote as a planning and zoning commissioner, as long as he says that he's a Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee member, etc. I think that should be fine since there are different rules. The little description of building height. So here's the diagram that we use in code to talk about the building height restriction definition. So our 35-foot building height restriction is defined as building height to be measured vertically from any point on a proposed or existing building element to the existing grade prior to construction or to the finished floor elevation after construction, whichever is more restrictive, directly below said point on a proposed or existing building element. So that doesn't mean like measuring the finished grade at a daylight basement where the tallest roof is way over here and might actually be technically higher up, but it's not at the same point of the building. You don't get to do that. You just do any cut as you go along the bread loaf of a house. So in any case, because this is the plan unit development, the development does have the ability to request alleviations, and you have the ability to grant those alleviations as you find them warranted by the design and the amenities proposed. So in this downtown core area, even in the adjacent commercial zoning, we do allow for going taller. We might even encourage it. I know that we haven't seen a lot of this extra height occur yet in McCall's history, other than maybe one project back in Sam's original tenure and Robert's tenure that was maybe like a 4-story building a few blocks away, just across from the library. And we know that the library now is a little bit taller. So this development, proposing them not directly adjacent to those single-story, single-family homes in the Colorado area, and in one case butting up to the railroad pathway, 1.5 cases butting up to the railroad pathway, those get hidden quite well from most of the public realm, which is what is good design and what we like to see. But it does exceed the official height limit as it's stated in the code, so that's why it's a requested alleviation. I don't see any problem with it as staff. To me, the experience of that in space and time should feel very similar to like the green belt going through Garden City and Boise, where you've got natural space, you've got the river, but you've got this Sorrells Place neighborhood of really tall townhomes that you come upon at a certain point when you go along that green belt. It's really more of a symptom of urban development than it is of something going wrong, as long as you design it right. So in this case, I think that they've made a lot of appropriate considerations, especially reducing the unit size from the original like 5,000 square feet we were seeing before. 1,500 to 2,000 feels a lot more appropriate for this area of town, and this style of development. As we get into what code criteria you have applicable, this is under your purview, the planned unit development criteria. You have a table within your staff report. We did not find any alarming places of non-compliance during review with planned unit development criterion. The one thing that I would mention is I hadn't updated the staff report to include the language for resolving the First Street extension easement, which would be a disagreement with criteria H. So I have a recommended additional condition of approval. In speaking with the project team earlier today on how we would resolve that before going to city council. And I'm happy to provide that sample condition if you feel you would like it later. It's subject to design review because any of the units, even if a individual purchaser would like to hire their own building crew to come in and build it, they would need to adhere to the design that this commission approves for this development in this place. So you'll review the design criteria. And then it is a subdivision preliminary plat, so we have to go through the criteria for a subdivision preliminary plat. Plan unit development and subdivision preliminary plat are recommendations to city council. Design review can be decided at the planning and zoning commission level. And then the development agreement, the things that we consider in there are the timing for the phasing, if that should occur, and it's not going to all be built in one phase. We would want to know what phase of platting will occur. Will we go from north to south? Will we go from out to in? Will we go from south to north, et cetera? It's good to know that so that we can know what our permitting expectations are as time goes on. And then that should also include when will those local housing units be built? Who's responsible for qualifying any tenants? Now that we have a housing program manager at the city of McCall, that would be the person that we would recommend qualify any individual for purchase of any unit into the future. And then we would also take care of the language associated with a future First Street extension within that development agreement where say we get 25 years in the future and it's time to figure out how to get to Stibnite via First Street. We would make sure the language is written correctly on both the plat and that development agreement where future Morgan and future Meredith, when Morgan and Meredith maybe are retired or run away, understand what to do with this little pocket of McCall. So other than that, I can stand for any questions. Staff is in support of the requested alleviations to us and to Nina over at Jacobs. It really makes sense to accomplish this style of development where it really would not make very much sense to see a bunch of stamped single family homes separated by 5 to 10 feet in a place that is really a transition into an urban development pattern. So I can stand for any questions.
All right, commissioners, any questions for Meredith?
The local housing units are part of the development agreement, so we don't need them to be a condition.
I would leave the final condition of approval as like figure out with staff how you want this to be. I can actually go to the actual condition. Figure it out. So the condition I have written for that says prior to scheduling a hearing with the McCall City Council, the applicant shall work with staff to determine the method of preservation or designation of workforce housing units or participation in the local housing program. So we would need to review in specific the language that will belong probably in the development agreement. The last few times we've done this seamlessly, it just declares and states which of those unit numbers are to be designated as the local housing unit, and then at what time the recordation of the deed restriction should happen. So usually that's either if you want a faster building permit, you would get the deed restriction in before pulling the building permit, but you don't get to know what your final cost to recover is. Or you would get your deed restriction filed and your incentive dollars dispersed at the time of C of O. So that you do know what cost you're trying to recover, and Michelle is available if I screwed anything up, but I think I got it right.
So what you said now becomes another
No,
condition.
it's in there, you're good.
Great.
Unless you don't want to be good, I can make it bad.
I might not get the vote.
Other questions?
Other questions? All right, go to Morgan, engineering.
Hello, or not city council, sorry. My brain is running commissioners.
Yeah. I don't want it.
Well, hello, commissioners. My letter is in your packet. And I've tried to just kind of highlight some of the items that are a little more risky for the applicant team at this point. And I did talk to the applicant team about some of this afternoon. The previous traffic impact study was approved by the city, and the agreed upon mitigation at the time was to reconstruct First Street. It wasn't clear at the time of when this was initially submitted if that was still the proposed mitigation measure. But it is. They've confirmed that. So that just needs to be memorialized in the development agreement, and anything else that needs to happen there. There were minimal stormwater documentation that was submitted with this iteration, but there are plenty of spaces on this property that they've identified for stormwater. So they might not be sized, but they've at least thought about where the stormwater is going to go and how it's going to be captured and treated. And that report will just verify all those sizing components. I have comments about the subdivision plat, which is more nitpicky. Things that just need to be addressed prior to that being finalized. And I do have a comment in there that regarding the future First Street extension. And showing that easements need to be shown on the plat for that. So we kind of have started that process. Let's see. We talked about the First Street reconstruction. I don't have too many standout comments. Another one, just as a standalone project, Trails Edge needs a secondary access to First Street. So they'll need an easement from the neighbor to the north or another spot to access First Street if something doesn't happen to the north. They just need a secondary access, which was similar to the previous iteration of this project. Let's see. Water, they need to show a few more water main extensions so that they get a proper looped system. And that's all part of their previous hydraulic model, which would still be applicable here. Yeah, and then just some more technical details on like other water infrastructure that might be needed, like an air release valve. If they need a booster pump station, figuring out water meter sizing, and then just some details and comments about the development agreement and other agreements that will be needed to make this come together. Let me know if you have any questions or would like more details about anything.
All right, commissioners, any questions for Morgan?
If the development to the north doesn't get built, then how do you get back out to First Street?
The previous version had an easement through that property to the north that would reconnect. It followed the similar roadway, but it would be more of like a gravel standard, maybe emergency access only. But it was an emergency access comment previously, just following it through.
We hold up the permits if we don't get the easement. That's where the trigger happens.
Right. Any other questions for Morgan or Meredith for staff? Okay,
Go ahead.
go ahead, Liz.
Oh, so just a question on all of Morgan's concerns. would all of those be addressed before receipt of the permit?
Those should all be addressed likely prior to final plat application, I presume. Yeah, I have some in there prior to city council, like the agreements and mitigation measures, but most of this is prior to final engineering approval or final plat application, depending on which route they want to go for construction.
Okay, so in other words, all of this will be addressed and confirmed before they can move on to a next stage. We don't need to add a condition in our approval.
Correct.
Awesome.
All right, any other questions for staff? Great, this is a public hearing. We will open up the public comment. Is there anybody online or on the phone that wishes to comment regarding this application? If you're muted, you may need to hit *6. Okay, anybody here in the audience wish to comment? Pretty much got it all comment?
Hello, this is Michael Walters.
Yes, Michael, if you could give your name and address, please. And you got,
Sure. My name is Michael Walters. My property is at 505 North First Street, directly across from the proposed development. So I'm just dialing in because I have some concerns that I want to express and just be heard so they can be considered, if you wouldn't mind.
okay, yeah, you have 3 minutes, please, Mike.
I have a number of topics I'm going to cover, so I'm just going to kind of read through my notes on these real quick, just to try to hit them all because I know I have limited time. Regarding the density, 42 units sounds like a lot of units for the available buildable land. I understand that the zoning is R8, but I also heard that the footprint is condensed. So I'm wondering what the actual density is for the actual footprint of the building sites, and if this is consistent with the spirit of the R8 zoning and McCall's intended identity. I know this is going to directly affect traffic, schools, emergency services, et cetera. Regarding alleviations, those codes are in place to protect the neighborhood, including neighbors immediately across from this, like myself. And I already heard talk about some code alleviations. It sounded like some were necessary because they're for reasons I didn't necessarily understand, but I don't understand why a development can't be designed adhering to codes that protect the neighbors. I'd also question whether a single alleviation is given, if that's a single alleviation, or if that's an alleviation multiplied by the number of units that receive that alleviation. Also, this is going to drastically change the existing neighborhood. It's going to replace tree canopy and wildlife with hardscape, lighting, vehicles, buildings, introducing light pollution, traffic, grading, and everything else. And there's not going to be, it's going to be permanently altered. As a direct neighbor, that kind of concerns me. Also specifically, I see on the, I don't have all the documentation, but there are properties labeled 41 and 42 that will sit almost directly in front of my house. I'm wondering if those will have alleviations that will negatively impact me. And those placement of those properties suggests that my view is going to be decreased, which will probably decrease my property value, my privacy, and my family's enjoyment of our property as it currently exists. I have concerns about traffic. First Street is already used as a bypass when 3rd and Lake is congested with holiday traffic or tourists. I'm concerned that improving First Street is going to make that even more of a mess during those times, and it's going to be continually used as a bypass for speeding vehicles, towing trailers and boats and things like that. I know there's work going to be done regarding that First Street work. I still don't understand, even from last time the last PUD was discussed. I don't understand how this is going to affect my front yard. I don't know where the property line exists or where you think it exists. And I see swales in the documentation, but my property, my front yard sits like 7 feet above the street at some points. So I'm not sure if you're expecting to grade my property or how it's going to affect my driveway. But I think the property owners on that street deserve clear, documented explanations about what's going to happen to their front yards and driveways. I only have 2 more. Sorry, I'll try to get through them real quick. This in lieu of park contribution. So there's a 5,200 square foot lot about 1/3 of a mile away that's currently up for sale for $170,000. So I understand that McCall City Code 9310 requires 0.0277 acres per parcel. That's a lot. So that's a lot more than 5,000 square feet. So I rejected $77,000 and a couple trash cans for dogs meets the intended spirit of that city code. I think the code intends to recapture the value lost due to a decrease in open space and increase in density. And that captured value should be consistent with current property values and should create amenities to compensate the immediately affected neighbors, not put into a slush fund that's then later used for parks that may not be directly impacted. Sure. And then the last thing was, because it's such a large development and it can significantly alter McCall's character, I just ask if a phased approval and development approach would be reasonable. Anyway, sorry to take so much of your time. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you later.
Great, thank you. All right, is there anybody else online or on the phone that wishes to comment regarding this application? Okay, I'll close the public comment. Commissioners, any other, or actually, would you like to rebuttal on some of the questions?
Alan Cottle, property owner, 500 First Street, McCall. I just want to say one thing. We brought up the Harmons next door, and if you haven't met them, they're wonderful people, and they own the Triangle piece. They have 6 units approved. They still need, my understanding is they still need to come back for a city council approval. So we had a great call yesterday with them, and we are now, the engineers are working to do the easements, Meredith, that you mentioned. We'll do the easements and get those in place. So that should be soon. And we're even looking at co-developing. It makes more sense for us to get one group to come do the First Street improvements together and maybe put all of ours in together. And the reason to maybe not phase the infrastructure and do a little bit and then a little next year, because you tear all that dirt up, it'd be better to just get it up, get the systems in, get it covered, and then we'll work through the market will dictate kind of the rate of construction of the homes as they sell and we move through. So the intention now is to just put the infrastructure in and get Blackwell in at the same time with us, and then get the First Street, get all that in and kind of be done with it. But I also want to say one other thing. I've seen Dave a few times. The city system here works. Dave is tough. Morgan is tough. Meredith can be tough. And on my side, it feels like, well, I'm a large property owner here and it's tough. But I would say the last time through, and we've done a lot, I used to be vice president of Hyatt, and I've developed all our acquisition development for that company around all in North America, some of the most beautiful places in our country. And McCall is right up there, honestly, as far as sheer beauty with any of them. And I said this last time, but we came through here 35 years ago, my wife and I, and we fell in love with it, named our daughter McCall. She's our marketing director. She's wildly interested in how this goes so we get moving along. But I'm going to retire here. We're going to be here. I'll be living in this plat. I care a lot about it. And what happens, and this is something to say your system works. It was starting, so not being as sensitive as I should have been, my Hyatt experience was we go in these nice places, you bring world-class architects, world-class this and that. And this guy was out of Deer Valley, did a lot of stuff there. That's great for Deer Valley. It didn't translate well here. Then you have engineers that want to create a subdivision and not a community. And so then you have an architect that fills up things, then fills up the things. We got these units that were too big. And I was honestly getting worried, like, I don't know that price per square foot we can sell these. And so when it got denied, I wasn't over there crying a lot. I went, I don't know what to do next. I don't know how to solve this and be better. And Meredith called, said, we have some suggestions. And then they come in and now we go through and we had Michelle. They walked me through what to do. And we assembled a local team that were experts at this and that live here. And I was able to tell them what I wanted. I want to live here. but I want something that more open space. I want all these trees. And I feel like done the best we can to deliver that, and we will. And I just want to give a kudos to a tough system that actually does work, though, because at the end, it is a compromise for all of us. But you can get something that I think will work great over time that we'll all be proud of and that I'll want to move in and live in. So I just want to add that 2 cents. As tough as it's been, I think we're getting something far better for a long-term community. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, commissioners, any? Oh, yeah.
But just the public comment program. We get an opportunity for rebuttal. Amy Holmes, 706 4th Street on behalf of the applicant. Thank you, Alan, for those comments. Those are really important to hear and heartfelt. So thank you. Just responding, I believe his name is Mike Walters. Mr. Walters' comments are well heard. We can understand that the neighbor across the street would have an opinion, and that's what's wonderful about the public commenting process. I would just respond to answer hopefully a couple questions and maybe put him on at ease on a couple things, because I know as a member of the public, you don't hear everything or you don't tune into all of it. I'll start with the question about the front yard. The engineering documents, when you do dive into those, provide actually that the road gets moved 10 feet to the west. So that hopefully actually gets better for Mr. Walters, and that he will actually get the cars 10 feet further from his house. And so there's some alleviation there. The comment about the parks in lieu fee, we are very familiar with this. It came up with the parks group, which is, hey, the contribution that you're giving is not at market rate. I can't remember exactly which member said that, but it's understandable. What's you have to look at is that the code provides with the restriction of a park. So it's not a single family residential lot that would be worth several $100,000. It has the restriction of a park to it. So that's where the appraisal, we rely on the experts, and they come back with a figure that is below market rate because of that specific restriction related to it. It is not buildable. And so the code specifically allows this. It also takes into impact the significant cost to the applicant for the paved pathway right through the development. So it's not just the dog stations or those things, it's the maintenance cost to develop that path that is also calculated as that parks in lieu fee. The traffic impact, there was an analysis done. Understandably, that's a concern from this neighbor, but those First Street improvements hopefully will alleviate some of that as far as getting bikes more onto the sidewalk, separated from the city street. There's improved safety there. We all want that. My office, as we mentioned, is on First Street. I walk this all the time. I want it to be safer as well. Related to density and zoning, this is allowed in this zone. So I hear the comment related, does this make sense? And I would agree with some of the comments related to what Meredith was saying, related to areas of urban development where you see residential homes, single family, next to a mixed use zoning area of commercial community and different types of zoning. And this really is a project that makes sense, kind of combining all of those zones. So I appreciate that comment and just wanted to provide a response to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now commissioners, any questions for staff or the applicant before we close the public hearing? Make a motion, we close the public hearing?
Second.
Make a motion in a second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You're none, okay. Thoughts, questions? And I like the idea that it's definitely reduced down the density and more open space. Which seems to be much better than the previous version. Okay, are we gonna recuse yourself? Or you don't have to. I don't believe you have to because I'm pretty sure you're fine with it.
I think you have to.
I don't think so either.
Yeah,
Dave is good, right? We haven't done one of these in this order yet. Have we?
well, we keep flipping back and
I know.
forth. I've
I
never
wouldn't
had
think
to
it'd be a
before.
conflict.
Bill's asleep.
No, I'm listening. So what's the nature of the possible conflict?
Just because I've seen it in Parks and Rec twice.
And he's
Oh,
voted.
I thought we'd addressed this.
Yeah, I thought he was okay.
I just wanted
Yeah,
to check.
I don't think we've got a conflict.
Would have done it twice.
Well, it's just for the parts.
Parks and Rec.
Oh,
I mean, are you able to limit your decision on this to the evidence presented at the public hearing today?
Yeah,
Then we're good.
Oh,
I
thank you.
just, I appreciate the public comment from the neighbor, but I remember when there were 10 or 15 neighbors in here complaining about this development. I just want to congratulate Alan on not giving up and most of all, finding a different team.
Liz, how about you? Any thoughts?
I think it's beautiful. I love how they have really taken the topography, the land, the trees, the other, zones around it and found a solution to, try to live up to the R8 zone, but in a way that makes sense for the topography. I think the code alleviations all make sense for what they're trying to do, and they're not just because they didn't do the time to think through how to make it fit. I think those are necessary code alleviations to make the development work. And all in all, I think it's great. The only thing I would need is, Meredith said she had that additional recommendation for a condition, so we would want that language in there as well.
Okay. Any other questions? Think we can probably go to Meredith and our checklist of items on the various.
just one question. The area to the south, this green area here and that's a bike path that goes through there or just a walking path at the
It's
very
like a-
bottom of the
Gravelly surface.
gravelly surface. So it's, okay.
6 feet wide.
Yeah, okay. And then south of that, these are where the old growth trees are that you were talking about. Is that,
Old growth is everywhere throughout the site.
oh, it is?
There's clumps of it.
Okay. It's the only question I had.
Okay, now if we can go our checklists.
Would you like to start with me reading you that recommended additional condition?
Yeah, might as well.
So for your consideration, I would recommend that you add the condition prior to scheduling a public hearing for city council. The applicant shall work with staff to include language in the development agreement and applicable easements on the plat to manage for a future southerly extension of First Street as indicated in the transportation master plan. You may vote to consider that condition of approval at this time as you deliberate.
Need to vote that or just have it
That's
added in when we
I think
do a
if
motion?
you do it via voting to consider it, then you can not have to read it off later.
Okay. I make a motion, we include that item and the conditions of approval as stated. I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? You're done. Motion carries.
Would you like to start with design review criteria?
Sure.
Only
4.
There are more than 4. And
There's dog and pony shows. We're just doing design review.
I know. A through G. Okay, so question number 1, is the project in conformance with the comprehensive plan and why?
Is in conformance to the comprehensive plan. Fits within the density, has the park items, it has the pathways. So I believe it. That's in general
Upgrade of arterial street.
B, the project must not jeopardize the health, safety, or welfare of the public.
Improves the safety. public with pathways and the road expansion.
Okay, C, the project must conform to the applicable requirements of the zoning ordinance and subdivision ordinance as enumerated in the design review chapter of Title III.
Yes.
Why?
It's under the maximum amount of units, so it's well within the R8 zoning capacity. In addition with the, no, that's all I got.
Okay, D is the project will have no substantial impact on adjacent properties or on the community at large.
I actually think it will help the surrounding properties.
Would,
And they're also doing lower density than.
because of the
typically
number of units that you're gonna have, there's a decrease by
Yeah.
a substantial number.
E is not applicable. F? Is it in the shoreline or the river?
Applicable.
And G, is it on the scenic route?
Doesn't matter.
Wow, go.
There was only one.
I guess you're right. I will eat my words. Okay, so would you like the planned unit development standards next?
Sure.
So, planned unit development may be allowed in any zone, provided that the decision-making body makes the following findings. A, the underlying zoning, Title IX, which is the subdivision code, and other applicable regulations under this title and Title IX are met, except as the applicant has specifically requested in modifications to the standards as part of the PUD.
Agree.
The items have been met.
You have a Y.
So as we were going through the design of the property and the space, in order to fulfill the zone that it's in, we have to give some code alleviations, because townhouses doesn't make sense to have, setbacks between a wall. Similarly, like the garage, I know is a big one, as it is not a public facing situation. I think it allows for traffic flow within the development without impacting public view.
Thank you for being so thorough. Okay.
I try.
The proposed usage shall not be detrimental to present and potential surrounding uses, nor shall they be detrimental to the health, safety, and general welfare of the public. The physical features of the site, public facilities, and existing adjacent developments and uses shall be considered. Discuss.
Not detrimental to surrounding areas, actually improves the high school dirt path through there. And additionally, the First Street improvements.
The trees are protected. Large part.
And I think the staff comments about how this is how, planning envisions joining multiple zones and being cohesive with the environment that it's in.
You should say that comment for the next one.
C, the density of the planned unit development considered as a whole shall be in substantial conformity with the density of the underlying zone. Say what?
So what Liz said previously works for this one.
Yeah.
It's also
Form is
under
less.
here the maximum for the density.
D, any variation from the basic zone requirements must be warranted by the design and amenities incorporated in the preliminary development plan.
Are you talking about alleviations to the code?
Would you like me to read those off again?
Well, not really.
Okay.
Because we're talking about setbacks and square footage
I
and
believe you have 8 or 9 of them to
Yes.
consider.
yes. However, most of those are alleviated if you're doing a townhome type situation.
Townhome, private street, so it's, doesn't have to be 60 feet. Height, building height, alleviation.
Yeah, and in this case, it's more because of SMU in 2006 to finish the project, opposed to the natural topography site.
E, the final development plan must be in conformance with the preliminary.
Who knows?
Who knows? Because this is the preliminary. We'll find out someday. Okay, F, the plan unit development must meet the general objectives of the comprehensive plan.
I believe it does meet the plan. It's lower density, plus you have some workforce housing included with the deed restrictions.
No, that's true.
It out. G, existing and proposed streets and utility services must be suitable and adequate for the proposed development.
Finally taking care of something that hasn't been taken care of in 107 years.
An old development.
You will have to put a plaque out there. H, a development agreement is required between the developer and the city, which delineates commitments of the developer to the city and of the city to the developer, including but not limited to assurances for public and private improvements and maintenance of the same.
In
And
progress.
With our condition of approval, that will continue to be resolved.
I,
NA.
PUD may be proposed in conjunction with an amendment to the zoning map and comp plan. What did you say? NA?
NA.
No one is asking for that today. Okay, and last, we have our preliminary plat standards. You must decide if the proposed plat is consistent with the applicable general and specific plans as specified in Title III of the code, Title IX of the code, or the comprehensive plan. It looks like reverse psychology because the language of the code is in reverse psychology. Just answer the question that I asked and translate.
Is for.
It is consistent, yes.
Okay, the design or improvement of the proposed subdivision must be consistent with applicable general and specific plans. Parks plan, housing plan.
The
comp
design is
plan.
consistent with the various plans. proposed.
Three, the site must be physically suitable for the type of development.
It's
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Give a why.
It has residential all around it. It goes into civic, the topography of the site wouldn't allow for other civic uses necessarily.
And I'd also say that, the design specifically accommodates the existing physical site.
E4, the design of the subdivision or proposed improvements must not be likely to cause substantial environmental damage or substantially and avoidably injure wildlife and their habitat.
You're allowed for that.
Conserves cathedral
Sure,
trees.
yeah, preserves that wildlife or habitat.
Okay, 5. The design of the subdivision or type of improvement must not be likely to cause serious public health problems.
Probably not.
You say no.
Six, this is our big long condition, or criteria. The design of the subdivision or type of improvements must not conflict with easements acquired by the public at large for access through or use of property within the proposed subdivision. You are to consider easements of multiple kinds, or of all kinds that may be of use, and should only apply to easements of record or those established by a court. Discuss.
There are many.
And they're being dealt with. Various easements, First Street. Resolved. The other easements that Maureen is talking about, they're working with Blackwell to the north. You're working on the easement to the south for future First Street. Expansion or extension. Yes.
Covered. Okay, number 7, the proposed subdivision must be in compliance with all other ordinances or laws of this city and county.
It is in compliance with the various laws.
8, the proposed subdivision, oh, I duplicated that one.
Yeah, what happened there?
I think you did it then.
I heard that before.
So now, if you wish to express any individual reasons for decisions coming up or any specific plans that you feel are empowering this development, you may do so. Otherwise, you are open to simply make a motion at your whim. Your time to speak to the development.
Other questions?
Tell them your.
We closed the public. Yeah. For a motion, just to make sure we include the one we voted on to be.
So I think we have to do 2 separate motions, right?
You do, yes.
And because
I'll take it.
Because we added that other condition already, it's already.
It's just part of the staff, yeah. Just make sure that's included.
Liz, you want to do that then? You spoke up.
Sure. So I move to recommend approval of PUD 2503 and subdivision 2503 to McCall City Council with the staff recommended conditions of approval, including the one we voted on in our deliberation.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Meredith, let's do roll call.
Chairman Lund,
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner Petty,
Yep.
Commissioner Rock.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. I move to approve DR 2512 with the staff recommended conditions of approval, including the one we discussed in deliberations.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we go on to the next item, going to be continued. I remember, do we need to open the open a hearing on that one? Okay. You do it, Nate.
And your magic date is August 5th. Thanks, Sean.
All right, I make a motion, we open the public hearing on item.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, this one is going to be continued to August 5th meeting,
Yes.
and we don't need to make so many vote on that. It's just continued. And we'll keep the public hearing open.
Yep. Yep.
Right. We don't have to vote on that, right?
We do have to vote to continue.
We do have, okay. I make a motion, we continue the public hearing open on this item to the August 5th meeting.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. And I don't believe we have any signs, or do we have any signs? No signs. And just a reminder, upcoming meeting is August 5th. And anything special happening that we would be prepared for?
Minutes. What are,
We'll have some minutes. I don't know.
Yeah.
so Monday.
What about it? Wait, let me read off next month's agenda really quick before we move on. So you'll have a couple records of survey minutes. Potentially a return of a re-application for design review on Elo Road. You'll have the first few commercial buildings of Broken Ridge Commons.
it's the one on Elo Road again, did you say we have? Oh, yeah, that, okay.
And then I'm hoping you will have
Definitely
a
run
very,
forever.
very small 2-lot final plat from a remainder procedure that you did about a year ago. So we will see it. That's all I have. Monday, Michelle, would you like to summarize Monday?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I have a bit of a sore throat. So there was a public hearing on Monday, on the impact area. I think many of you know that we, meaning the city, submitted a letter mid-May with, a proposed boundary area. And so the meeting that was scheduled this last Monday was a public hearing by the county commissioners, which included a public notice of a map that they then created. This was not the city initiated proposed boundary, but rather the one that they had come up with. And so the public hearing was on 2 items. One of them was the boundary map. The other item was basically building regulations. And so the meeting was at 2 p.m. at the county courthouse. There were over 70 people that showed up. So there weren't enough seats for everyone. But I think 47 people signed up and 40 people actually provided public comment. I think about 8 of those were proponents of the county's proposed map and plan to take over the regulations and administration of the impact area. And then the remainder were folks mostly living within the impact area that were opposed to that and wanted to stay in the impact area with the existing impact area regulations. So so that occurred. The county commissioners did not make a decision. They said the next decision would be on July 23rd at 2 p.m. And there was actually not a lot of discussion around the proposed map that the county provided, nor was there really any kind of discussion around the building codes that they were looking at sort of repealing and enacting. So the public hearing was closed, and The next meeting looks like it'll be July 23rd. Are there any questions about that?
Why was there no rebuttal to the comments that the individuals made?
I'm not sure why there was no rebuttal.
And that was it. I was amazed.
Oh yeah, Tony, you were there, right?
No,
Oh, did you just listen in?
just watch it on YouTube, but
Okay. Yeah, there wasn't an opportunity for rebuttal.
Commissioner's choice. Fun.
More to come later, I guess.
Yeah. I would have thought they would have something to say about it, but
Did their staff present?
They presented their staff report.
Okay.
It's not very deep, but
Nobody asked
Yeah.
questions about north of the lake?
I think a lot of public testimony mentioned the lake and concerns about the watershed in general. But there wasn't really any deliberation on impacts or outcomes.
Is the 23rd then more public comment or just
The
a
public
hearing?
hearing is closed, so our theory is that it'll probably just be deliberations.
so it'll be like that.
So we'll let Joey know.
Yeah, more to come. All right, well, that,
Go ahead, Bert.
I was just gonna say that concludes everything, so. Make a motion.
I make a motion that we turn the meeting at 6:10.
A motion to adjourn. And a second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, are adjourned.
So it's
It's your job, you gotta go there the 23rd and take notes for us.